William Morrow and HarperAudio present An Indiscreet Princess, a novel of Queen Victoria's defiant daughter, by Georgie Blalock, performed by Anne-Marie Gideon. To WCR, I Love You. Chapter 1. The Queen must say that she does feel very bitterly the want of feeling of those who ask the Queen to go to open Parliament. Why this wish should be of so unreasonable and unfeeling a nature as to long to witness the spectacle of a poor, broken-hearted widow, nervous and shrinking, dragged in deep mourning, alone, in state, as a show, where she used to go supported by her husband, to be gazed at without delicacy of feeling, is a thing she cannot understand, and she never could wish her bitterest foe to be exposed to. Queen Victoria to Lord Russell. London, February 1868. Princess Louise Caroline Alberta rose from the sovereign's throne beneath the gilded canopy of state at the front of the House of Lords. She nodded to the sea of peers in their parliamentary red robes trimmed with ermine, and the MPs in their sombre suits standing at the back of the chamber. They returned the bow, honouring her as the representative of her mother, Her Majesty Victoria, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland Queen. The Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk, in his red and gold braided coat, stepped forward and picked up the imperial state crown on its velvet cushion, signalling Louise to descend from the dais. The gathered lords and gentlemen stood so still, every rustle of Louise's long parliamentary robe, carried by 4 pages of honour, echoed off the Gothic wood walls. The ominous quiet rattled her more than when she'd entered the Lord's chamber and taken the throne to wait for the gentleman usher of the black rod to lead the members of Parliament in from the Commons. She'd braced for a barrage of boos from the Republican MPs, but even the ones who'd hissed at Mamma during the last 2 openings had remained respectful. Of course, Mamma had no one to blame but herself for their ire. If she'd willingly fulfill her duties instead of grudgingly appearing only when her children needed money for majorities and weddings, the Republican MPs would have a great deal less to complain about. The respectful quiet continued as Louise followed the Earl Marshal to the side door. She held her head high, maintaining the regal stance she'd spent days practicing along with Mamma's speech. Lady Sybil St. Albans, her dearest friend, watched from her seat beside Lady Ely, one of Mamma's ladies of the bedchamber. Mamma had commanded both women to assist Louise today. Once Louise passed, they'd fall in behind her for the procession back through the royal gallery to the robing room, passing again the lines of gentlemen-at-arms standing watch in front of the dignitaries and officials gathered for the state opening of Parliament. Lady Ely stared grim-faced, while Sybil beamed as brightly as the diamonds in her tiara. Sybil's smile eased the air of responsibility hanging on Louise's shoulders like the long parliamentary robe. Today was a triumph, and far from the disaster Mamma had feared. In the quiet of the robing room, Lady Ely directed the pages of honour in the removal of Louise's robe. Louise sighed when they lifted the weight off her shoulders, and she rubbed her neck as she took in the large frescoes of King Arthur's court by William Dyce hanging on the walls above them. Papa had commissioned the pieces during the rebuilding of the Palace of Westminster after the nasty fire 30 years ago. The knights and ladies stood among the ornate, gilded high ceilings, their medieval air so different from Franz Xaver Winterhalter's regal portraits of Mamma and Papa flanking the gold throne. Papa stood in his dark rifle brigade uniform, his Order of the Garter star shining on his chest. When he'd posed for the portrait, no one had known his death was only 2 years away. Louise closed her eyes, the warm feel of his large hand covering hers as potent today as it had been the first time he'd led her.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?